Welcome into another edition of Friar Territory. I'm Kyle Glaser. We have a very, very special show for you today. I know I always say that, but it is especially true as Marty Caswell makes her debut as a co-host with me here on Friar Territory. This is something I've been talking about with Marty for quite a while. We were able to get the deal done, and now it is official. Marty, I am so thrilled to have you.
Kyle Glaser, I am happier to be here with you than you can even imagine. Yes, you're right. You and I have been talking about this for quite some time. I'm glad that we're able to go ahead and put something together. I'm glad that we get things done faster than, the Padres do. So
Absolutely. And as that is for darn sure. And that leads us into Marty is going to take over as the primary host. Because again, as you all know, she has a tremendous history of hosting radio throughout San Diego. I grew up listening to Marty, so she's been doing this forever and is as good as it gets in the industry. Whereas my strength, of course, is more of an analyst. And just like baseball, we are all about putting people in the best position to succeed. And the best possible show is Marty as a host, me as an analyst. And now we are going to go ahead and get started with that. Marty, take it away.
Kyle, number one, I can't believe that you just said that you grew up listening to me.
I was in high school. I wasn't little, but I was in high school.
That's even worse. As a high schooler, oh my goodness. Well, thanks for that. I appreciate you. I can't believe you never called into the show, but no, I have admired your work for all these years. You and I, we exchanged so much time in the press box talking about the Padres, this and that. So it's good to actually do a show together. And I promise you, for show number 2, I will have my bobblehead collection put together that's going to rival yours. I have Khalil Green, I have Jake Peavy. I have a ton of stuff that I'm going to go ahead and add to my imaginary bookcase that's behind me. But okay, listen, right now, at the risk of Groundhog's Day, it is December 1st.
Yeah.
On November 10th, the Padres introduced Craig Stammen.
Yes.
At that time, we asked AJ Preller 1,000 questions about his future. Are you close to a deal? What's happening with your extension? I asked Padres CEO Eric Grubner, how likely is this deal getting done? All the beat reporters around who cover the Padres said a deal was imminent, perhaps the end of the week. Kyle Glaser, it is December 1st. There's been zero movement. There's been no dialogue. There's been no rumors. What do we make of AJ Preller not having a deal done? And by the way, 1 week away from the winter meetings.
Look, negotiations are always a process. There's so many things that go into it, and we're still 4 months away from opening day. So on the one hand, it's not a 5-alarm fire yet where all the warning signs are blaring. At the same time, you're right. Mm-hmm. The messaging from the Padres throughout this process has been, we expect AJ Preller to remain the president of baseball operations past the 2026 season. Even prior to Craig Stammen's introductory press conference, that was the message pretty much as soon as the Padres were eliminated by the Cubs almost 2 months ago. So on the one hand, look, there's plenty of time. Negotiations take time. Very rarely does everything go smoothly and according to schedule. At the same time, the fact that the messaging has been consistent all the way through, and we are now less than a week away from the winter meetings and there's still no deal done, at the bare minimum, it's eyebrow raising. And look, the Padres will be best off the sooner this is resolved in whatever direction they choose to go. Whether it's they do extend AJ Preller, whether they decide to hold off an extension, but he still is the president of baseball operations through 2026, or if they decide to go in a different direction. Whatever the resolution is, they should come to it sooner rather than later for the best, that would be what is best for the franchise.
How about even for free agency? And I know that, I asked AJ this at the presser, like how much of the conversation about your future with the Padres was an issue when you hired Craig Stammen. I mean, that was his special assistant, right?
Yep.
They work very, very closely together. If you talked about Pujols or Nick Hundley, I'd imagine every single candidate as manager was saying, listen, dude, I'm signing up for 3 years. Are you going to be the guy, or is it going to be somebody else? If you're dealing with free agents and agents, I mean, how is it not about not knowing now this is who the guy is going to be?
There's no question that has some effect. It depends on where the player is in their career. And I talked about this with Heath Bell and Mike Cameron a little bit. If the player is at the point in his career where he's just looking for the place where he can perform best, or he's going to make the amount of money he's looking for, who's in charge is not really going to play as big of a role in his decision-making process. But if it's, say, someone who is nearing the end of his career and is trying to win a ring and knows they've only got, 3 or 4 years left, going somewhere where there's a very, very real possibility of a major change at the top of the baseball operations pyramid, on top of ownership uncertainty, that does have an effect. So again, it's going to depend on the player, their personality, where they are in their career. But there's no question. when you are a team that is trying to get everything in alignment to make a run to the World Series, as the Padres have stated is their goal, having uncertainty in ownership and having uncertainty at the top of baseball operations, it's not a great place to be.
I had wondered, there had been some conversation as to whether or not, AJ Preller was in sync with the CEO, which is Eric Grupner, right? The division of baseball ops versus the business side. But I think there's so much more to this, because if the team is going to be sold, and this process, if you think announcing AJ Preller takes a long time to get his deal done, the ownership transfer, ownership change, the sale, the approval, that takes even longer.
Yes.
But if you are a potential new owner, I mean, do you usually want your own guy, right? I mean, doesn't that complicate it?
Generally speaking, that is what happens. Now, there are exceptions. You think about David Rubenstein with the Orioles came in, retained Mike Elias. We can debate whether or not that was the right move, but that is what he did. So, again, there's all sorts of dynamics at play. But one thing that I think needs to be addressed here and is important context for all this.
Okay.
Peter Seidler was AJ Preller's biggest champion through and through and through. And let's be clear, if you go back to 2019, at the end of that season, at that point, the Padres had 5 consecutive losing seasons. AJ Preller's handpicked manager, Andy Green, was fired because the team punted on him. And that's a direct quote from someone in their front office. Normally if you have 5 straight losing seasons, your handpicked manager gets fired for losing the clubhouse, and you have a documented strike against you, a suspension for violating rules regarding the exchange of medical information. 29 other owners would have fired their GM at that point. But Peter Seidler was always AJ Preller's biggest champion. And look, since then, the Padres have 4 playoff appearances in 6 years. They have back-to-back 90-win seasons. But at the same time, as much tragic as it is, with Peter Seidler not being there anymore, the same level of unconditional support, it changes. When you have new people, there's new dynamics. And I'm going to be curious to see what ends up happening here, because a lot of this too comes down to not only should the Padres give an extension, which is question 1. Question 2 is how long? If it's, another 1-year extension with an option, okay, maybe that makes sense. If it's a 5-year extension that makes him one of the highest paid executives in baseball, that doesn't make sense. So there's so many dynamics at play here. And I think it's important that they all get resolved quickly, because the longer this drags on, yes, the more it will affect just their overall baseball planning, free agent signings, staffing. It has so many ripple effects when you don't know what's going to happen if you go into the year with a lame duck GM. They need to get this resolved sooner rather than later.
Kyle, Peter Seidler said, I feel like we had annual conversations with Peter about the job that AJ Preller has done. And he said, and when you talk about Andy Green was hired, he was not hired to win. This is a guy who inherited as a first-year manager 4 Rule 5 guys on his roster. He had no chance. He was the bridge to when they were going to start spending and investing. He was the bridge from the blue Padres to the brown and gold Padres, brown and yellow Padres, right? And Peter would say that he started to judge AJ Preller from the Jace Tingler hiring. So based on that, and they did go to the postseason, right? In that first season, how would you judge the job AJ Preller has done since the Jace Tingler era?
And again, this is the tricky conversation. And again, I would love to hear your opinion as well, right? AJ Preller, as I've talked about ad nauseum on this show, is one of the most divisive figures in the industry. When I say the industry, I'm talking other executives, I'm talking agents, I'm talking coaches, I'm talking players. The pro side is, like I said, Padres have had 4 playoff appearances in the last 6 seasons and back-to-back 90-win seasons. 2 things that have never happened in this franchise's history. The teams he is ultimately responsible for building have packed the house for 5 straight years and made Petco Park an incredible home field advantage among the best in baseball. And he and his staff, I should say, have brought in a tremendous amount of young talent through the draft and internationally. That is what has allowed the Padres to make these blockbuster trades. So all that's the pro side. On the con side, 11 years, 0 division titles, 0 National League pennants, 0 World Series titles. The track record of the 9-figure salaries and even some of the upper, 8-figure salaries has been disastrous. From James Shildt to Will Myers to Xander Bogaerts. It's been a disastrous overall record to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars lost. And we are now on the Padres' 6th manager in 12 seasons. And this is AJ Preller's 5th hire. No other president of baseball ops gets 5 manager hires. So again, there's pros and cons, and depending who you talk to, they'll say one outweighs the other. I'm just, where do you stand on it?
I'm kind of right in the middle. I mean, the early years were interesting, and also when you talk about the spending too, and this is a conversation that could be had later on when you write the book on the Padres and the AJ Preller era. No, but I do. I like when you talk about some of the bad signings. I do wonder how much of those signings were about AJ Preller making those moves, and how much was because Peter Seidler stepped in and said, you know what, I'm going to give Manny that extra money. When maybe if you're AJ Preller, that he was willing to let Manny go ahead and enter free agency and perhaps invest in Juan Soto or different players. You know, how much about Xander Bogaerts was about Peter Seidler or was that AJ Preller? So there's a lot. He's made some mistakes. He's made a lot about some mistakes, but also as someone who has been in San Diego my entire life, this is someone who is the architect of literally the most exciting Padres teams we've ever had, right? I know so many times you're talking about listening to me on the radio when you were in high school, when we're talking about, all right, you know, whose jersey do you buy? There was no one. They had no stars. There was no reason to go to games. They had no hope. They had no chance. When you go to spring training, it was already over. You knew that. Yes. It was just about, do you love baseball? That's why you go. But now it's different. There's star power. There's expectations. And I think that to me is what's changed. What he has done with this fan base is he has forever changed the expectation of what fans expect.
No question.
And I don't know, you can ask more. I mean, you want to win, but not everyone can win.
Right. And I think moving forward now, look at, okay, is there a case where a GM or president of baseball operations has gone into the year as a lame duck and had success? Generally speaking, the answer is no. You look at, Mike Rizzo went in last year as a lame duck. He had an option, but for all intents and purposes, a lame duck. He got fired.
During the season.
There's one exception that is interesting, though.
Okay.
Jed Hoyer, of course, former Padres GM. He went into last year with the Cubs as a lame duck. He had been their president of baseball operations for 4 seasons after Theo Epstein stepped down. They were rebuilding, but things looked like they had stalled out. Back-to-back 83-win seasons. It wasn't certain whether or not he was going to remain in the job after last year. The Cubs end up having a good year, and he gets an extension around the trade deadline. So there is precedent for a team waiting to give their president of baseball operations an extension in their final year during the season. Again, it is rare. It does happen. That would be the case where, okay, they waited and it worked out. But again, typically when you see lame duck GMs, it's because, hey, the team hasn't performed well, back-to-back losing seasons, or they're stalling out. I could not find another example of a team coming off back-to-back 90-win seasons and back-to-back playoff appearances going into the year with a lame duck GM. Generally speaking, those guys get extended, and extended earlier on.
Would it surprise you if you get a deal that would run him with Craig Stammen, with his sixth manager?
And that, again, is where this is a really interesting dynamic, because generally speaking, you want your president of baseball operations or GM to be tied with your manager. But again, if you're the Padres and you look at it and say, okay, what makes sense for us to do? Is it to give AJ Preller, again, a long-term deal? Like anything else in life, it depends on the price. And I personally believe the answer is no. I think if you want to do a 2-year extension with an option for a third, I can see that. If we're talking again, 5-year extension where he wants to be one of the highest paid executives in baseball, not all executive salaries are public, but David Stearns last year, $10 million a year, that's the highest known annual salary. Again, that's not something you do. So again, it's tricky.
I would have a hard time saying that. I would have. I think that's the idea of a long-term extension is impossible, especially with the uncertainty of the ownership. If Peter Seidler were here, that could happen. Shoot, he might own half the franchise. But considering what we know about, considering what we don't know about the future of this team, and that they're going to be sold, that I believe they're going to be sold. Especially when you consider the statement from Rob Manfred, that kind of tells you, listen, this is where it's heading.
Yes.
I would be shocked if you were to make him one of the highest paid GM baseball ops guys, 5-year deal when there's new ownership coming in.
For the record, I completely agree. I've just learned, especially with this franchise, sometimes to expect the unexpected. But I agree. Again, I think realistically, the max you go is a 2-year deal, a 2-year extension with a 1-year option. Where do you stand? What would you say is the right length?
I think 2 years with the option. I'm just wondering, do you think this hang-up is more on John Seidler and Eric Gupner, or do you think this is more an AJ Preller thinking, you know what, man, I'm not best friends with the business side. I'm going to have options. Maybe I don't want to be here for all the uncertainty, and maybe I don't want. Do you think that maybe Do you think also that he may perhaps had a possibility in Colorado before they went with Paul DePodesta? I mean, this is a guy that knows how to go ahead and take a train wreck franchise with 0 stars and bad contracts and turn them into an exciting product.
Based on the reporting that I've done, just talking to people, no, Colorado was
Okay.
not an option. The Rockies are very much an organization that was not going to allow their incoming GM to have full reign to clean house, and that was a big reason
Mm,
why Matt Foreman and Amiel Sadier bowed out, because Dick Monfort said, "Hey, you can run baseball us, but we're keeping this person, this person, this person, this person." Most GMs are going to say, "No, I need full control," and we know AJ Preller in particular would not have operated
mhm.
like that. So no,
Yeah.
that was not an option. Look, in terms of who's at fault here, again, there are a lot of different perspectives of things. Again, negotiations take time. What I will say is this, right? From the Padres' perspective, it does not make sense to give him a long-term deal to make him the highest paid GM in baseball, or one of them. From AJ Preller's perspective, if you're AJ Preller, you say, look at what I've done. Look at the 4 postseason appearances in 6 years. Look at the stadium being packed. I
Yeah.
deserve to be paid like that. So again, finding out the compromise, the middle ground, is always the tricky part in these negotiations. We'll see what happens. And again, whether the resolution is he does get an extension or he doesn't get one and he's a lame duck throughout this year and maybe they
Mhm.
revisit it during the year, or if they decide, hey, we couldn't reach an agreement, we're going to part ways, whatever it is, the sooner they come to that resolution, the better for the Padres.
I completely agree. Again, the Craig Stammen press conference, the intro presser was November 10th.
Yes.
3 days later came the email from the Padres saying that John Seiler was exploring a sale. And I just think if you're a Padres fan, you're like, man, what's going on? It seemed to
Yes.
be the understanding that a deal was imminent, end of the week, and it's been complete silence from the organization. We're heading into the winter meetings in 1 week, and unless something comes into my email inbox in this next week, Kyle Glaser, buckle up. We're having the same conversation in a week from now, from when the winter meetings
Sounds
kick
good,
off.
and it'll be well deserved. Again, if we get through the winter meetings and there's still no deal, again, I mentioned it's not a 5 alarm fire yet, blaring warning sign. But if after the winter meetings there's still no deal, I'd say the warning level definitely goes up at least one step.
Okay. Okay. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. All right.
All right, so
Now,
Marty, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was going to say,
Go
all
ahead,
right,
Kyle.
so sounds good, and let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back to discuss Mike Shildt's new job and Dylan Cease's 7-year, $210 million contract with the Toronto Blue Jays. We'll be right back.
I have a unique holiday gift idea. It is called Superpower because, Kratz, they care about you. It's a very unique health platform. It's new, and it finally gets you the answers that you need about what's really happening inside your body and what to do about it.
I got the answers. I'm on the journey of what to do about it. Why would I not want to give it to one of my loved ones in my life?
Give your loved ones something that actually lasts. That's right, Kratz. Better health and more time with you. If you go to superpower.com/gift, you get a free $49 premium gift box with your gifted membership. After you sign up, they'll ask you how you heard about them. Please mention FT to support the show. One simple lab test measures 100 plus biomarkers. We're talking hormones, vitamins, minerals, and so much more. You'll get a full health report and a personalized action plan built by clinicians, including nutrition, supplement, and lifestyle guidance. Get after it, FT fam.
All right, welcome back to Friar Territory. Kyle Glaser alongside Marty Caswell. Marty, we talked before the break about AJ Preller, his lack of an extension. Now it's time to talk about 2 ex-Padres personnel, Mike Shildt and Dylan Cease. As we discussed before the break, Mike Shildt, new job with the Baltimore Orioles as an upper-level coordinator.
Mm.
I'll go with my reaction in a second. What were your thoughts when you heard the news?
Well, that was quick. And I think it says a lot about how he exited the Padres, right? I know he said that he retired initially. He was done. He needed a break from baseball. It was wearing on him. And then we heard some reports coming in about the relationship that he had with his coaching staff, right? And with AJ Preller. So it's not too surprising. I think the bigger question again was whether he was encouraged to leave, whether they were going to fire him. I would love to know the full circumstances of his departure. It's very, very unusual that a man who loved managing baseball, who loved managing this team, who, by the way, was close with the players on this team, who was well liked, at least by the players, maybe not the coaching staff, but he walked away from 2 years, $4 million. These jobs are hard to come by. I would be shocked if Mike Shildt ever manages again in the big leagues, considering the noise that followed him following St. Louis and now with the Padres. One thing we do know about Mike Shildt, great manager. I mean, at least when it comes to the base making decisions, right? And getting to know the players and getting players to believe in him and buy into him. But man, something was happening behind the scenes. And just the fact that he is now back in baseball after one of the shortest retirements I can remember tells me a lot about what was happening inside the Padres.
It's certainly an interesting dynamic. I will say one of the things he did say on his way out was that if he returned to baseball, it would be in a role like this, a player development role where he's working with players on just, improving their games as opposed to a manager type of role. And you have to understand, this is where Mike Shildt made his name, cut his teeth in the game. It was coming up in player development through the Cardinals system. And that's where he was most renowned. Again, say what you want about decisions on X day or Y day. On the whole, like you said, he was a very, very good baseball mind and a very, very good decision maker and did a good job establishing relationships with the players. But more than that, he set a culture of we're going to play clean, aggressive, smart baseball. And it's a little thing, but it's a big thing that makes a world of difference. It's the old Cardinal way he brought to San Diego. And look, this Padres team for years did not always play clean baseball. It makes a huge difference that they did. When he stepped away, my first thought was this is exactly the kind of role that he would come back in. I actually thought it'd be with the other Beltway team. I thought it was going to be with the Nationals because I looked at what is a young team that plays just absolutely atrocious, embarrassing, horrendous quality baseball.
Yeah.
That to me is the type of team Mike Shildt was going to be perfect for, where, hey, come in, we're going to clean it up. We are going to pay attention to the details. We are going to be fundamentally sound. We're not going to make the kind of dumb mental mistakes that cost teams outs and ultimately games. He's now going to do that with a different young team in Baltimore. And look, I do think the Orioles will be better for it. Having Mike Shildt working with their young big leaguers, working with their prospects in AA and AAA, he will make them better. But there's no question that, again, it happening so soon after the departure
says a lot.
Again, eyebrow raising is certainly a fair assessment.
There's definitely something more going on behind the scene. I'm not sure if this is something that you put on AJ Preller or whatnot. And I think the thing that kind of got me a little bit, Kyle, and people always say, oh, sure, it comes out now. But I think there was some of this dialogue happening when he was fired by the Cardinals after winning. To your point on AJ Preller about you don't fire guys after back-to-back trips to the postseason, well, it didn't stop the Cardinals from moving on from Mike Shildt. So I kind of wondered, why wasn't there more follow-up reporting there? But I think now we're getting an idea, and I think Shildt was just done with it. I mean, it's important to have a cohesive relationship with your GM. It's important to have it with your coaching staff, and there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. So it's not too surprising it went this way. Maybe we'll find out more maybe the winter meetings next week, but I am not too surprised about how this thing ended. I'm just surprised he got back into it so quickly.
I'll say this in terms of his tenure with the Cardinals, right? And this all happened while I was a national writer at Baseball America.
Okay.
It was a fairly open secret within the industry that the way he treated his coaches in St. Louis led to a lot of conflict and led to a lot of problems. And there were a lot of people in the organization who were very, very vocal about, we can't have this. And you're right. It's very rare for a manager to post 3 straight winning seasons and take a team to the playoffs 3 years in a row to get fired. But the situation in St. Louis had become untenable. Now, why it wasn't reported more publicly, again, I can't speak to sources of, folks whose job it was to report that at the time. Again, but within the industry, it was fairly well known. And I will say this, some of what happened in San Diego and what did eventually come out, again, great reporting by Kevin Acee and Dennis Lin, everyone involved. It was not as bad as it was in St. Louis. At the same time, it's kind of a low bar to clear. So I think ultimately this is the kind of role that I think he will thrive in the most, where he's just working directly with players and maybe doesn't have to deal with all the other aspects of managing that come with it, whether it's dealing with the media, having to manage a staff of X number of coaches. He can focus on what he is best at and what he loves the most. And ultimately, that will be what puts him in the best position for long-term success and the team that hired him in the Orioles. So, in terms of him being pushed out or not here, look, I I have checked in with this so many times, and it's consistent. No, he left on his own accord. People who do not BS me and tell me the truth have said no, he made his decision. All the factors that go into that decision, again, we know what he has said publicly. Speculating on other factors, I don't feel comfortable doing that. But we have of what we know are the known facts of the situation.
Okay.
Look, he left. I'm surprised he got back in, but I'm not surprised he got back in this kind of role with this kind of team, a young team that's, again, trying to polish things up and get to that next level.
The question I meant to ask both Preller and Grupner at the Stammen presser was, did you guys try to stop him? Did anybody try to stop him?
Yeah. No, and again, it's an interesting dynamic, right?
Mm-hmm.
If someone is in a job and they have mentally made the decision, hey, I'm done, can you pull them back? Is it worth pulling them back, or is it worth respecting it? And this is something that happens in all workplaces, all industries across the country. And again, without being in the room to know exactly what the conversation was like and how it went between Mike Shildt and AJ Preller and everyone else involved, it's hard to know whether or not it made sense to even ask that question. Every situation is different. It's just hard to know. But you're right. I would have been curious to know from their perspective if they did make that attempt.
Okay, I know we're going to get to the Dylan Cease contract shortly, but before I do, and I know you've discussed this with both Mike Cameron and Heath Bell. Did you like the Craig Stammen hire? Given the 4 first-time candidates that we know of that were the finalists, Ruben Niebla, who is so well respected, who I think is going to be a future manager, Nick Hundley, who was awesome as a player, who was Buster Posey's first choice, but he didn't want that job with relocation. Let's see, Albert Pujols and Stammen. Was this the best? Do you like it?
I will start by saying, look, I think Craig Stammen has a lot of qualities that you look for in someone who hires a manager, right?
Yes.
Great baseball mind, natural leader, tremendous relationship builder. All
100%.
those things matter. What I've talked about with Mike and Heath Bell throughout is for a team that is saying their goal, and again, they have stated this repeatedly again and again and again and again, that their goal is to compete for a World Series in 2026. Hiring a first-time manager. And when I say first-time manager, I'm talking about someone who has never coached at any level of professional baseball or managed at any level of professional baseball. Like, talk about Craig Albernaz with the Orioles. That's different. He was a minor league manager for years. He was a coach for years. That hire as a first-time manager is different than this kind of hire. Hiring someone with no coaching experience and no managerial experience at the professional level, any professional level, runs counter to we're trying to win in 2026 because there's going to be a learning curve. There are going to be mistakes made. There's going to be a growth process that ultimately takes years to kind of figure everything out and slow the game down. So for me, I actually think Albert Pujols would have been a terrible hire. Just having covered in Anaheim, I think that would not have been a good hire. Big personalities in that clubhouse, guys who tend to brew when things don't go well. Albert Pujols is one of them. I think that would have actually been a disastrous hire. To me, if you want to win a World Series, and I talked about this with Mike and Heath, in the wild card era since 1995, every team that has won a World Series, their manager either had previous managerial experience or 2 full seasons of coaching experience in the big leagues. That's not a coincidence. There are just nuances you pick up. So I think at the end of the day, the fact the Padres were interviewing so many first-time managers, A, told me a little something about their finances, because more experienced managers are going to cost more. And B, going with this again, I think Craig Stammen has a lot of great qualities. Hiring someone with no previous managerial coaching experience, no matter who it is, and saying you want to win a World Series this year, that doesn't line up. Where are you?
I think I would agree with you. I agree on the Pujols thing. That didn't make any sense to me. There aren't many superstar Hall of Fame players. And I mean, when he was the best player of our generation, he was the best player by far. He was awesome.
Yes.
And he managed, WBC Dominican team, but no.
Yeah.
The Craig Stammen thing, the one advantage he does have, other than the relationship with AJ Preller, is he knows the organization inside out, and he's tight with the players. And it's not just about being friends with Manny Machado or Tatis, but I do know that he was about as respected a player who's ever walked into the clubhouse, and that's going to matter. I think that he can put his ego aside. The thing that I don't know, and maybe perhaps you do, is his bench coach, Randy Knorr. Now, this is a guy who has been he's an experienced bench coach with the Nationals. He's done everything in baseball. So hopefully he has people that he can trust. and that you have most of your staff, I think of your baseball staffs returning. So that's good. There's some continuity there. But I mean, other than that, what do we don't know. I don't know. And I agree with you that there are so many questions. When it shocked the living hell out of me when they announced Craig Stammen. I'm like, what? Where did this come from? Where did this come from? So I don't know. It's up in the air. It's growing me a little bit, but man, I agree with you. When you're trying to win a World Series and then you're hiring a first-time manager, I have more questions than anything else. I really do.
And again, we have seen some of this in the industry, but it's rare for a team that is ready to compete right now, right? The Angels hiring Kurt Suzuki. Look, the Angels have the longest
consecutive. They gave him a one-year deal. Was that a one-year deal for Suzuki?
One-year deal, yes. One-year deal for Kurt Suzuki, which,
why?
Again, that organization, look, they're a mess.
They're a disaster.
They have the longest playoff drought of any organization in baseball, the longest streak of losing seasons of any organization in baseball. Not the Pirates, not the Marlins, the Angels.
Wow.
And there are just so many issues there. So again, a team that has no chance to win or is many years away from winning. Okay, you said, the Nationals' Blake Budera had a few years managing the minors with the Rays. But again, that's a team that is 3-4 years away from winning. They're trying to build up. The Giants with Tony Vitello, again, they have not been a playoff team since 2021. Yes, they're trying to win, but they haven't had that success. They're not an easy team to look at and say, oh, they're ready to win right now, just because they haven't for 4 years. A team that is trying to win right now, that's what makes the Craig Stammen hire so different. And again, if I go back to the Orioles hire of Craig Alvarez, right? Having a half decade of experience managing the minors, a bunch of years of coaching experience in the majors, that's different. That is a very different kind of first-time manager. But you're right, hiring Randy Knorr, an experienced bench coach who's worked with legends like Davey Johnson, as well as first-year managers like Matt Williams back when he was in D.C., you have Ruben Niebla, one of the game's best pitching coaches. You have Ben Fritz, one of the game's best bullpen coaches. That will help. The Stammen hire and then going with a first-time hitting coach in Steven Souza, who has also never coached at any professional level. That, to me, is going to be an interesting dynamic, having a brand new manager and a brand new hitting coach, which are the two areas the Padres kind of have the most questions, and you're going from veterans in both roles to first-timers. Again, respecting someone as a player is very different than respecting someone as an authority figure, as your manager and your coach. And we just have to wait and see what happens. I know everyone wants an answer right now, like, oh, this is how it's going to go. That's not how life works. We have to wait and see. I think it was Heath Bell had mentioned 3 months. Give them 3 months. Whatever mistakes they make in those first 3 months, let it go. It's a learning process. But after 3 months, that's when you should start to judge. And that's fine, except if you're trying to win right now, you can't really be in learning mode until almost the All-Star break. So,
okay, Kyle Glaser, stop right there. Did you say give it 3 months? Have you met this fan base? We're judging. We're all
Heath Bell said that.
We're judging.
Correct.
Game 1 spring training.
Yes. No, and again, right. This is a fan base that is hungry to win. And we talk about this as expectations get raised. The first time you make the playoffs to end a playoff drought, awesome. We love it. But if you keep just kind of getting to the wild card or division series round and you keep coming up short, it doesn't cut it anymore. You're right. There's a lot of impatience right now in this fan base. And
there's a lot.
It will be important to be patient. But the fact that the Padres made a hire that will require patience, that's again where the questions come up.
Patience, when you have this payroll, does not equal success.
Again, yes, there are a lot of misalignments there. But again, right? Maybe Craig Stammen comes in and he takes the reins from day one and it clicks. Then we're all going to look very stupid for having these conversations, and the Padres front office will be like, hey, told you. They could be right. Like, we have to acknowledge that possibility. It's just a very big risk they took.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make Padres fans feel better about this hire before we move on to Dylan Cease and his contract, okay? Let's see. Wait, 1, 2, 3. The last 3 managers AJ Preller has hired has taken him in the playoffs.
Correct.
Jace Tingler, Bob Melvin, and Mike Shildt. So maybe he can get lucky again with Craig Stammen and the nucleus they do have in this clubhouse.
Again, we will see. I will say but I will say that is going to be much more of a factor of how they fill out this roster. Because again, a manager can only work with the players he's given.
100%.
And as we've talked about, this is a team with some very, very talented core players you can get excited about, and a lot of holes, including in the starting rotation. one of whom, Dylan Cease, one of their top stars from last year, although that's shallow praise given some of the way, how things kind of played out with Michael King getting hurt. Really, it was Nick Pivetta, and then Dylan Cease was their second most productive starter, even though he had a bad year.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's in Toronto again. We knew we were going to have to replace him from the Padres' perspective, but it's an interesting signing. What was your reaction to 7 years, $210 million for Dylan Cease?
Holy smokes! Number one, there's no Padre fan that thought that. Excuse me. There was no Padre fan that thought. I can't say that thought they. There was no Padres fan that was confident that the Padres had any chance of retaining him. They wanted him traded before the deadline. He's a goner. Get what you can for Dylan Cease. They ended up really needing him and his innings in the playoffs, although didn't really go too far. But wow, holy smokes! I think every person that I talked to last year about Dylan Cease, including you, thought that Dylan Cease cost himself maybe $100 million in free agency, given his struggles. This one shocked me that, number one, that it went so quickly and that it was that much money by the Toronto Blue Jays. But maybe when you're the runner-up and you were a strike away from an out away from winning the World Series, hey, it's a worthy investment.
No question. The Padres re-signed Dylan Cease, even for half of that amount, $100 million, would not have been right for the Padres given their payroll. So let's be clear. He was going to be gone no matter what. It was just a matter of what the dollar amount was going to be. And you're right. I talked a lot about he cost himself a lot of money. But the caveat I added that was, but there's probably going to be some team who's going to look at the strikeout rate and say, we can fix him, while ignoring everything else. And it's been really interesting to me. So first of all, yes, $210 million. My jaw dropped. By the way, as did a lot of people in the industry. Yep. They thought 150, 160, which to me even would have raised some questions. But 7 years, 210 after a year in which Dylan Cease, his ERA was up around 5. Look, let me back up. Dylan Cease did not have a good season last year, and he would be the first person to tell you that. What I've always appreciated about Dylan Cease is his honesty and his candor. His ERA was up around 5 for most of the year. He had a few good starts at the end that kind of lowered it a little bit. He gave up the most home runs in a season he has in his entire career. And yes, the strikeout rate was very, very, very good. Strikeouts per nine was best in baseball, but his walk rate was also concerningly high. And we saw throughout the season his fastball command was terrible. You talk 20 to 80 scouting scale. There were plenty of games it was a 20. And so on the one hand, as I'm seeing people write about this, talk about saying, he makes the starts and the strikeouts. And those are important. But when you give up as much hard contact as he did, and your ERA was as high as it was, playing your home games in Petco Park, with a defense that was third in defensive efficiency playing behind you, when your ERA outside of Petco Park was over 7 at one point, it ended up well over 5. I mean, it's a big, big, big risk. The Blue Jays are betting that they can fix him, and that's fix his fastball command, change up his pitch mix. He needs to throw that knuckle curve more. Way too much fastball slider only, made him predictable, especially when hitters could just spit on the fastball. That's why he struggled to get through the second time through the order, because he was a one-pitch pitcher at times. Again, it's a big risk to take, and maybe the Blue Jays are right. They've had a lot of success with veteran starters before and helping them be successful, but $210 million, $30 million a year, that's a big, big bet to make.
Who other than Dylan Cease and Scott Boras, who is the biggest winner out of all of this, and why is it Michael King? Well, what does it do for the rest of the pitchers out there in free agency?
It makes Michael King, I actually think it makes Framber Valdez a big winner. Okay. Because he can now go from thinking 190. He says, hey, Dylan Cease got 210. Framber Valdez has objectively been the better, more consistent pitcher for 4 years now. Again, Dylan Cease has been great year, bad year, great year, bad year. Framber Valdez has consistently been fantastic. He's left-handed. Now he's 2 years older, but it's now very easy for Framber Valdez to say, and even with the whole cross-up thing, which let's be clear was intentional, I'm sorry, there's no question about that he absolutely crossed his catcher up.
Yeah.
He can say, hey, if he gets $30 million a year, there's no reason I shouldn't be getting 32, 33, and it might be shorter term just because he's older, but yeah, he's going to, Framber Valdez is going to make out like a king now. Ranger Suarez is going to do well, and Michael King as well. Again, it was always a fantasy. I felt some Padres fans had that, he's going to take a 1-year pillow contract.
No.
3 years for $75 million was like the floor here. Luis Severino's 3 years, $71 million was like the worst possible outcome for him. Nate Eovaldi, Sonny Gray, $375. It would not shock me if his medical comes back. He gets 5 for $140, maybe 6 for $150, $160. I mean, look, starting pitchers get paid even when they're not healthy. And as we've seen with Dylan Cease, even when they don't have good years. If you have strikeout stuff, and you're at the right age and you have at least 1 year of success to point to, boom, nine-figure deal, no questions asked.
Potential gets pitchers paid and people fired. So we're going to see will happen there. Kyle, I'm going to save my questions to you on the idea. I know you've had this before with Michael, with Heath and Mike. The idea of Morhone and Miller into starters. I will save that for a different day, a different conversation. It's a longer conversation. Yeah. But outside there, give me 3 names out there that are possible candidates to replace some Dylan Cease innings not on the Padres roster. Can they find another Nick Pivetta sort of deal out there? Who's a guy that would make some sense?
Yeah, Zach Littell with the Reds, very quietly threw 180 innings plus last year. And because he's not a big strikeout guy, not a big stuff guy, he's going to come cheaper than a lot of other options. Again, he's more about, pinpoint control. He doesn't walk hitters. He works quickly, works efficiently. But if you're the Padres, you need 180 innings more than you need explosive stuff, but shorter outings. So that would be a guy. Again, there's some other guys out there who are coming off injury that have shown they can, log some innings in the past. The Zach Eflins of the world, although he's had an injury history. Adrian Hauser gave you decent innings last year. So again, there are options, but realistically, yeah, Zach Littell's the guy you look at. Who are the 180 inning type of guys who aren't going to cost a lot of money? He's kind of the only one. Okay,
before we wrap up today, Kyle, I want to check my email right now and just make sure the Padres have not extended AJ Preller. Let's see. No email from the Padres. So I think we can pick this up again when we meet up later this week. Yeah,
absolutely.
AJ Preller extension, and then we'll do it next week in the winter meeting.
It's certainly going to be a topic that will be on everyone's mind. And look, it will help dictate the Padres' course this offseason. Again, it all ties together. AJ Preller's contract status, it's going to impact their strategy for free agency, who they're able to attract. It all plays together here. This isn't just something in a vacuum about AJ Preller. It's about putting the organization in the best position to win and having some certainty at the top. Whatever that certainty is, whatever direction it is better than uncertainty.
A lot of nervous fans. It's been awesome, covering this team. I know it's so much fun to be a fan of this team because of the home and the expectations. This is a little bit different, and I feel like Padres fans are a little bit nervous because we don't know. They don't know what's happening. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what's happening with the ownership and with AJ Preller, which also affects directly who they can bring in. So we'll see, Kyle. It's going to be another interesting offseason. Hopefully a bit more action than last year when their signing was Nick Pivetta, was Gavin Sheets. By the way, 2 pivotal players for the Padres. So we'll see what this offseason brings. It's just beginning. It's December 1st. We are getting started right now.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Marty, thank you so much for joining me today. This was a great debut show. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you,
all our
Kyle.
Listeners, we will be back on Thursday with a lot more. Marty, I'm looking forward to the year ahead with you.
Kyle Glaser, likewise. You're the best. Thank you.
All right, everyone, that'll do it for this edition of Friar Territory. Go ahead and give us a review, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, whatever platform you're watching and listening on. We'd love to hear from you. For Marty Caswell, I'm Kyle Glaser. Thank you for watching and listening once again. We'll be back on Thursday. Take care.